obviously this is the Red Bull Music Academy, but one of the biggest things that led you into music, I think, was art, graphic design, beginning. Yep. And you're showing up here one of the first covers that you ever did.
Yeah.
Todd Terry, Royal House.
I should explain to people, I mean, I do many different things. I'm going to have to juggle between a few different programs to show visual work and music and movie stuff, so bear with me if I kind of seem a bit unprofessional about it.
What drew you to doing album covers in the first place?
I was just a music lover, a kid, and I used to work in a record shop every Sunday. So for about 4 or 5 years, I worked in a local record shop, and then I just pretty much knew that I wanted to design record covers as a kid. So as soon as I left college, I was very fortunate because basically I left college in the late 80s, and British London club culture was really coming into its own. And so I was going out pretty much every single night, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, going to a club till the early hours, hearing amazing new music coming out, and noticing that most of the record covers for these records were really awful. And so I went to go and see all the little record companies and said, look, I'm just come out of college, or in fact I was still at college, and I was like, I'll do a record sleeve for you for free, and if you like it, then give me some more work. And so that's kind of how it started. So things like, this was a record label called Champion Records, and they put out loads of early Todd Terry records and Frankie Bones and tons of very early house and techno releases. And I was doing all this kind of stuff. I was doing like 2 or 3 sleeves a week for these records coming out.
So you contacted Champion Records and you said, I want to do work for you. I'll do it for free.
Yeah, simple as that. And then people liked my work and I started getting more work. And like S-Express, I was at the WAG Club one night and Mark Moore, the guy who made the record, I just went up to him while I was DJing. I said, look, can I talk to you about, I know you've got a record coming. I heard, basically I got like a white label. Someone gave me a white label of the record. I said, I know this record's coming out. I want to do a sleeve for you. And then like the next day I went into the club with my portfolio, showed him, I remember sitting there at the table in a club showing him all my work. And he said, I love your stuff. Let's do some work for me. So all these early things, I was just kind of, I was 19, 20 years old, just doing record covers for music that I love, from everyone from Derek May and Juan Atkins and Todd Terry, really amazing people. Then I started doing hip-hop stuff with the Jungle Brothers and De La Soul and Queen Latifah, and this is before I was making music. At the time, I was just doing record sleeves and DJing.
And these record covers, how were you making them? Because I read that you were not making these on the computer.
No, I mean, I couldn't afford it at the time. This was like, I can't remember, this was maybe 80, well, no, it was the late 80s, and I think Macintoshes have just started coming in. And all the people, all the big design companies, they had Macs, and I couldn't afford it, so I made a real effort to try and do things which were more, specifically like this sleeve, it was meant to be like very, very early 8-bit, simple, like video game arcade graphics, and it was a bit of a kind of fingers up at all the bigger companies that could do these amazing 3D graphics and stuff. So, and also these kind of things represented the music far more. But everything here was done by hand. So this is pre-computer. Pretty much all these sleeves I'm showing you were all just cut out of paper and then photocopied, and it's a completely different process to how things are made.
And
now.
You eventually started a company which was basically yourself, correct?
Yeah,
Design
I mean,
studio.
I've never worked for anyone in my entire life. So I left college and I started doing my own thing, and yeah, I've never worked for anyone. So I just set up when I say a company, it was just me.
Right.
But I kind of, at the very beginning, it was kind of cool to go and see people by myself. But then I realized when I wanted to get bigger work, it was better to kind of give people the impression that I was a company, even though it was just me.
You talk a little bit about the influences on your design, because I think, you know, obviously big album cover, you know, junkies love Factory Records, Peter Saville, and all of these people. And The Face, which is a UK magazine, was around that time, was very beautiful. But I read that these people weren't, you know, the people that were influential to you.
I mean, at this time, I was really an arrogant, can I swear? No, but I was an arrogant little fucker, and I hated anyone that was kind of deemed as the establishment. So I remember meeting Peter Saville and being really rude to him, because I just thought, like, at the time, I maybe didn't appreciate really what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought I was the bee's knees, this little kid going out every night, hanging out with all these famous producers, doing record sleeves with them. So my influences were more, I mean, at the time as well, most record sleeves were really just a photograph with a bit of type on it. And I was a bit like, this is a piss take. People are getting paid thousands of pounds just to get a photograph and put a little bit of type at the side. So I used to work really hard on trying to create something more of a visual representation of what the music was about. And I was influenced by more like comic books and video games and stuff like that. That was more my influence than more classical type of forms of design and typography.
We were talking a little bit earlier about feedback from artists, and obviously you went and showed your portfolio to some people who were living near you, but Todd Terry is in New York, other places. Were you getting much people talking to you and saying, I love this cover?
Most of the American producers I never spoke to, and the records were being just licensed to a UK label. So I don't really think they cared. Like Todd Terry was making 5 records a week, so I don't think it really bothered him what was on his record sleeve. But when I did get to speak to it, like I spoke to Derek May once, all we spoke about was comic books and X-Men and stuff. It was a weird conversation. We never even spoke about the design. And I was just speaking to him for an hour about comic books. So I very rarely got to meet or speak to the bigger producers about work. But like people like Mark Moore from S Express, he lived in London. So I did, but a lot of them, we didn't have that kind of connection. I was actually free to do what the hell I wanted. That was a really good thing, actually, because normally the more an artist gets involved, the more of a pain in the arse it becomes. So it's quite nice to be given a free rein just to do my own visual representation of what I thought the music was about.
And what were you listening to all these records at the time? I mean, were these the records that you were like?
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I can't. You imagine, maybe not all of you being visual designers, but if you imagine going to a club, hearing a record, and then having your chance to put your hands on that record and do something with it. And these were anthems, These records I'm showing you, maybe you don't know these records because a lot of you are a lot younger than me, but they were big records. They were like the anthems of the time. So I was super fortunate. And these are, and I think the work benefited so, wholly from the fact that I loved these records. This wasn't a job to me. This was my life, So I really was passionate about what I was doing.
And you were working in a record store, you said, around this time.
Maybe a bit earlier, yeah.
Okay. And you were building up your record collection.
I was stealing as many records as I could. I had my boss, I had a boss of mine who was a complete thief, and I used to work there every Sunday. And he'd force me to try and take advantage of old people that had bad eyesight. And this is totally true. He'd kind of like, old women would come in and say, how much is that? And he goes, just charge him an extra few pounds. And so I was like, fuck you, and every Sunday I'd stole as many records as I could. He had no stock taking whatsoever. So I would happily steal record tokens and go to H&M. So basically I'd order any records I wanted, and they'd come in every Saturday. I'd just take them. And then I took record vouchers, and records he couldn't order, I'd go to H&M, go to shops in the West End and use the record tokens to buy records I wanted. So I built up that. I mean, my record collection, I got like 50, 60,000 records at home. I mostly owe 10,000 records to him.
So you don't have any problems with downloading these days?
No, exactly.
You were listening to quite a bit of hip-hop at the time, which was one of your first sort of major influences.
Yes, I mean, I haven't had time to organise these images properly, so not really in chronological order. Mm-hmm. But I think, I certainly was, hip-hop was electronic music, like new romantic music or electro, or that's what I listened to. I still listen to Human League and Soft Cell and Kraftwerk. That's really what I grew up on. And
when did you decide to start making music? What was the impetus to make that jump from, making the record covers and sort of listening to records? I
think it was things like The Art of Noise and listening to early sample-based music. Because I would never have claimed at the time to even be into music. I was into it's hard for me, this is quite a long time ago. But for me, I never wanted to be a musician. And being this anarchic little kid, I was like, I don't like music. So I hate the Beatles, I hate anything melodic. And I used to listen to Run DMC records that just had a beat and a guy rhyming on it. And that used to get me. I remember the first time I bought the first Run DMC album, like the first import record I ever bought in a record shop called Groove Records in the West End. And the excitement of listening to that record. And it was like, it had no musical elements whatsoever. It was just a drum machine with a guy rhyming on top of it. And that to me was so revolutionary, And so there was those records, and then at the same time you had like Art of Noise making very experimental kind of electronic records that were inspiring. So it was in parallel. And that was what was really interesting to me, because these things were running in parallel, but I began to hear them coming together. So I was going to like London clubs, listening to these weird European dance records. And then at the same time, there was this whole thing going on in New York. And you could hear them kind of like cross-pollination. Because you heard like the Art of Noise beatbox, which I should have, I don't know if I've got it here, but people mostly know the record. Have I got it here? Let's have a look. No, I haven't got it here actually. But a record like that was obviously inspired by New York records, by New York hip hop, but then you'd start to hear these elements in New York hip hop records as well. So I kind of was feeding off of both these things, kind of coming at both sides, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Was there a big scene in the UK for hip hop lovers, or was it all, you know, people buying imports, getting them shipped in?
I mean, before hip hop, there was like electro, you know. So, yeah, I mean, there was a huge electro and hip hop culture. Well, not when I say huge, but it was a big underground culture. And I think, especially from a visual point of view as well, I remember seeing Malcolm McLaren Buffalo Girls and thinking, I can do this. And for the first time, I heard music that I thought actually I was capable of making myself. Because up to then, I couldn't play an instrument. I didn't want to play an instrument. As I said, I wasn't into music, but I was into noise. And I was listening to producers at the time I really loved were making more noisy records. And I got a little sampler for my computer. I plugged it in the side of my computer for a Commodore 64, and it had like 3 seconds of sampling. And I started to just make beats with that, you know, could just sample a little bit of a hi-hat, a little bit of a kick and a snare, and that was it. And I could sit there for a day just making a track with just a beat, a snare, and a hi-hat. It was so exciting to be able to do that. And that kind of hip-hop aesthetic about, you know, quite a punk aesthetic about doing it yourself, that's really what got me into making music.
And was this the Brotherhood alias that you were making this early stuff on?
The first music I made was... we were discussing before we did this interview, like a reggae remix, a hip-hop reggae remix for something. And then I called myself the Underdog, and I started doing remixes as the Underdog. And then I started working with this local hip-hop crew called the Brotherhood, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to play, perhaps, a Brotherhood track?
I don't know if... let me see what... I've got here. Let's see. I mean, I'd rather skip... I mean, some of those tracks are pretty embarrassing.
We all have embarrassments in our past.
I'm trying to think, but to give an example, I mean, I'm trying to skip to where, let me see where I mean, if we skip forward a little bit from that.
Okay.
Then we can
when did you stop being embarrassed about the music that you
The truth is, I find all this very embarrassing. Truthfully, I've done a lot of stuff, but like I've got here a playlist of music I love.
Sure.
And if I play the music I love and then I play the music I do afterwards, it's going to be a bit weird because, you know, you can be really inspired and love music, and then you always compare your own things against the music you love. So I'm always quite embarrassed, but I'm not, you know, it's not about ego to me. I don't really, you know, I'd like to think I've been on the periphery of a lot of music scene and culture in this, internationally maybe, but I don't want to shout about it too much. I'm quite happy. I've been doing it for 2 decades, you know, and I'd rather be underground.
Is there a record in the list that perhaps inspired you to start making beats?
Okay. I mean, there was a producer, there's a guy called Adrian Sherwood who had a label called On You Sound. And that was kind of like, originally it was like a dub and a reggae label. But then he started to get involved, he worked with the Sugar Hill Gang, the people that made Rappers Delight. And so there's Keith LeBlanc, a drummer, Doug Wimbish, bass player, and Skip McDonald, guitar player. And he started working with them and doing these really weird fusions. So this was a big record for me at the time. Bad hum. And then I was listening to music like, so kind of more hip-hop kind of weird stuff, electronic records like that. And then, let me think. No, in fact, that kind of gives you a rough idea of where I started from. I mean, my music, I wouldn't say it's directly influenced by that, but that's the music that I loved.
And you were working with the Brotherhood guys, and I was reading an interview that, you know, obviously the people in the UK who are doing hip-hop were taking very obvious James Brown, Parliament, you know, samples, but you were looking a little bit outside of that. I guess bringing in the idea of this European sort of cosmopolitan sort of attitude, maybe.
I mean, relating back to this, so I was listening to records like this, but I didn't know how to make them. Yeah, I knew how to make hip-hop records because, you know, these records there were a bit musical, and I had no idea how to pick up an instrument or play anything. So I had this little sampler, so I knew that I could make hip-hop. So, you know, hip hop at the time was mainly finding a great loop, digging for a fantastic loop that no one had ever heard before, and trying to do something creative with it. So all the hip hop I listened to at the time was, you know, we were talking about in the early 90s, was all based around using typical R&B, American R&B loops and kind of, yeah, James Brown and Parliament Funkadelic. And I just thought, because I'm British, I don't want to be using that music. I want to be using European music. So I went on a crazy digging beat mission. I used to travel around Europe finding weird electronic European records. So I made it my kind of, that was my dogma, to only use European records for all the stuff I was doing, because I didn't want to be replicating. I mean, I appreciated the American hip hop, the way the records were being made, but actually the content of them, I wanted to do something different. Mm-hmm. So some early hip hop stuff I was doing, I can, for instance, let me find. So I did this album with the Brotherhood, and somewhere here I've got a track you can hear, get a rough idea. Yeah. And that was like all sampling ECM records and kind of ambient records and weird electronic records, and that was from like 1994 or 5, I think.
Mm. And then it eventually led into you doing remix work. This Brotherhood, was this labels picking up on what you'd done for Brotherhood, or?
Well, no, what I did, I had a hip hop label. I started my own hip hop label called Bite It, and I wanted to be putting out records which were uniquely British records, and also at the time a lot of British hip hop. The sleeves were terrible. The artists looked terrible. They had good records, but I was looking at things like Def Jam and Tommy Boy in America and thinking, why can't a British label have the same kind of unique visual identity as one of these big American labels? So I started this label, Bite It, and I started putting out records by local British crews. And I mean, these are the kind of sleeves we were doing, which were kind of, for the time, were fairly kind of revolutionary in that they weren't using maybe typical hip-hop imagery, and I was trying to do something far more interesting, both visually and musically. And I think through doing the Brotherhood album and doing the label, I started to get remix work, and I got the chance to do some remixes for some really great people, you know.
Massive Attack.
Yeah, I mean, I did like four remixes for Massive Attack. I did things for The Cure, for U2, tons of different people.
How did you, obviously one of the best known ones, remixes is for Protection of Massive Attack. Could you maybe, I don't know if you have it, but could you maybe also maybe play it and then walk us through sort of what you did to the track?
See, I haven't got the original here, but I think people know Massive Attack, they know the original, but oh shit, hold on. 1 second. And so what I was doing, the thing was at the time, I mean, there weren't so many people making beats in the UK. I mean, Tony's sitting there was my man Tony, and me, and maybe Pogo and Business, and a few people, not that many people that were making kind of good hip-hop based music. And the interesting thing for me was that even though I wasn't this musical guy, I think I had good ears for songs. And I think I was doing something that maybe a lot of the American hip-hop producers couldn't do, which is really take a good song and build that kind of landscape around songs. So I think I got kind of well known for doing that. So I most of the things I did were really great songs, and I got the chance to build my own kind of hip-hop landscapes around.
So what did
songs.
you specifically do to Protection? I mean, you know, I
haven't got the original.
Know the original in some.
Pretty much every remix I did, I took every element of the music away and just built my own track. I mean, it's just stupid in a way because I've done maybe 200 remixes with 100% my own music, which it could have been 200 of my own tracks, but
this is why we haven't seen an album
for a long time. But no, that particular, I mean, that's a huge loop off of Donovan that I hid. And to this day, like, they never got sued for it. But it was like hurdy-gurdy man loop that I played around with and then programmed, built a whole thing around it. But it was interesting because that's what I was, and this was kind of pre-trip hop really. I mean, me and Tony were quite involved with like the Mo Wax scene, but this is kind of, I was doing this stuff quite early. And And it's weird because I remember the first time I heard the Portishead record, I was like, fuck, I've really just, they did exactly what I wanted to do. And what I had been doing, to be honest with you, not maybe as good as them, but I had been doing that for a long time before them. And they came out with that record and I was like, damn, I might as well just stop what I'm doing and try and rethink what I'm doing, because that to me was the epitome of everything I was trying to do, which was using kind of hip hop with kind of odd European kind of krautrock and blues and electronic things, and with great songs, you know.
When you're doing remixes, do you have to like the track to
Have to love
the
the
original to go and do a remix, or is it just a project? You're like, oh, I like that.
I think to do anything well in life, you got to love it.
But a remix is a little bit of a different thing because you have a basis from which to perhaps work, even though you're taking away so much from it.
I've never done anything. Well, no, the things I've done for the money have been the worst things I've ever done. To be honest with you, everything I've done, be it visually or musically, is because I've loved it. If someone sends you a track and says do a remix, and you don't like the track, you've got to listen to that track like 1,000 times. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So if you don't like it, you're gonna have a tough job doing. I mean, I personally, maybe some people can, but if I lose a passion for what I'm doing, it's kind of essentially I do what I want in life to make me happy. That's the prime reason. If I can make money from it, that's a benefit. But ultimately, I just want to be happy and do things I enjoy. So that's the prime condition of everything I do.
So Portishead made you sad because they...
No, it made me happy because it was such a great record. But it made me kind of sad because I was kind of at that point, yeah, I kind of had this idea in my head, I've got to get a vocalist and I've just got to stop doing remixes for people. You know, I could, I've got like 200 remixes I could play, but I was saying I've got to stop doing remixes, find a singer and start doing stuff. And I just never got around to doing it because I was busy doing a mix every week, you know. Mm-hmm. So when I heard that, I remember when I heard the first single, Sour Times, I think it was, and I was like, whoa, this is so good. And there was like 8 different versions on the 12-inch, and every one was different music and as good as the other one. And it kind of made me kind of rethink about what I wanted to do.
Did you stop doing the label then, Bited?
Well, the label only lasted for a few releases, maybe, I can't remember, maybe 12 releases, because working with British hip-hop artists at the time was a nightmare. It was very difficult. It was just really quite difficult working with difficult personalities. So I stopped doing that, and I was doing the Underdog remixes more than doing the label at that time. And
eventually you started Output.
Around the time of hearing the Portishead record, then unfortunately my manager, one of my best friends, died. He suddenly tragically died. And so I had to kind of, I just took a step back, and I was pissed off with hip-hop anyway. I was pissed off because I heard this Portishead album. And I was generally just pissed off. And I get pissed, every decade I get pissed off. So, and it happens like...
Where are we now, exactly?
Well, no, I've just finished, like, when I closed the label, that was a pissed off period, and now I'm coming out of that. So it seems like every decade I kind of try and rejuvenate myself somehow. And then I was pissed off, and I took about a year off. And then I started going into thinking, what do I really love? And I started going back to those records that I was sampling, those weird records, those weird kind of electronic records, and those weird jazz records, and those weird krautrock records, and thinking, actually, this is what I love, because I was getting more and more tied into the industry, which is something I hated, because I was dealing with wankers every day. I wasn't dealing with people that really knew anything about music, and it was just business, and I hated dealing with the business side of stuff. So I said to myself, I just want to start a label, and the sole purpose of doing that label is purely to put out music that I like, and I don't give a fuck if anyone else likes the music. I don't care if I don't even sell records. I was sharp enough to kind of get a distribution deal with someone, and I thought, even if the records don't sell, I'm not going to lose any money, so I might as well do it. Right. So I set up Output solely just to put out weird, odd records that no one else wanted to put out that I loved. And then fortunately, like, the first person I met was Kieran Hebden, Fortet. Mm-hmm. I mean, I put out a few of my own records to start off with, but then I met Kieran, and he had a band called Fridge, and he was making these weird records in his bedroom with his mates. They were like teenagers in a little basement bedroom making weird records.
Do you remember when you first met him?
I met him through someone, but I met him in Rough Trade. Rough Trade when it used to be in Covent Garden. And he was just a really sharp kid, and we had similar influences, but at the same time, it's weird because, like, he didn't know anything about hip-hop, and I didn't know a lot about a lot of... He was listening to Stereo Lab and a lot of these kind of more indie alternative bands, like British ones I didn't know about. And so we'd spend evenings just... I'd play him, like, Souls of Mischief and... which were records that were fairly obvious to me, and he'd play me things he didn't hear. So it was really, he hadn't heard, and it was really a great relationship. musically.
What were some of the other artists that you put out in the early days of Output? I know there's like a Lisa Germano record, which is
that's just I did a remix for her that didn't come out through 4AD because they didn't like it, so I put it out. But I worked with Fortet and Fridge early on. I mean, there's tons that I worked with. I'm trying to think artist people. I'm see if I got the sleeves. Let me see if I got the sleeves that will remind me. I tried to blank this period of my life out of my head for a while, but I think today I'm going to have flashbacks. So this is a logo. This is a logo for my label, which is just the socket off the back of an 808 drum machine, so I did these. I mean, the other thing was as well as putting out records that that were weird and I didn't think anyone else would buy. I also had the chance to design my own covers and do things I wouldn't be able to do before. So I had a field day just designing sleeves, really creative sleeves that kept me satisfied as visually as well as it did creatively. I mean, this was something we did for a band, Icarus, and we did 1,000 covers, and every cover was hand torn and hand customized. So.
It seemed like even the promo copies that you would send out would be somewhat special.
Yeah, the promos we did. I mean, it was like commercial suicide, everything I was doing, but it was exciting. So yeah, every promo we did was a different color, hand screen printed, and I just thought it means two things. It means A, it makes it more special for someone, and B, we can charge a bit more money for it and hopefully not lose as much money. So. Yeah, that kind of kept me occupied for a while.
Mew was on the label?
Mew was on there. Then I was working with Morris. I was working with some of what I think at the time was some of the best producers. So I had Maurice Fulton, had Black Strobe. I was obviously started working with James Murphy and the LCD Sound System and the Rapture, the DFA guys. Mike Silver, who's Sonovac and now it's called Midnight Mike. Colder. I worked with, very fortunate to work with loads of people. I've got to turn my phone off. I'm sorry about that. This is an artist I'm working with at the moment who I'm doing a record sleeve for, and I don't want to talk to him. So you don't want to work with artists; they're a pain in the ass.
Obviously, around the same time, you're DJing all of the time around.
No, I've never. This is a weird thing. Up to that point, I was never a proper DJ, and it wasn't until I put out my own Playgroup record that I started actually having to be a DJ. Before that, I mean, I used to again with Tony here. We used to DJ together in Oxford. It was a place called was it Lakota? Caribbean Club, which was kind of like, and we'd play hip-hop records and house records and everything, But that was fun. But then when I started to put out my own music later on and do the label, I had to kind of DJ professionally, which kind of turned it on its head a little bit. You
were still having fun though when you put out the Party Mix, for example, which was sort of an example of your every single influence.
For people, so basically, if I skip back a little bit so I was pissed off.
Right.
And all this shit was going on. And then I started the Output label, and also I thought I want to make some new music, but I was a little bit jaded by it all. And a great way of inspiring yourself to make music is by working with other people. So by starting the label, it meant I was surrounded by all these creative people that were quite inspiring, And so I decided I wanted to make a new record. And if I give you an example of where my head was at, I just skipped through. So musically, I'm pissed off, and I'm making records like, let me think. Whereas I used to make records for fun, then I started making records which were complicated and took a long time to do and actually weren't fun to make. So I'm just trying to find something here. Let me see. Where's this? I did this Uncle record for... Now it doesn't sound that revolutionary, but at the time it was really bloody hard to do, especially with very limited equipment. And so I was doing all these dark things, and I kind of thought, you know what, I'm sick of doing this. I was spending like a month doing a remix, sitting there in front of a computer screen, my eyes bleeding, watching, doing all these kind of tiny little things. And I kind of decided I wanted to work on a new project, which would be the complete epitome of all the stuff I'd done before. And that's why I kind of started doing Playgroup, because I went back to the records that inspired me, and all the records that inspired me were fun records. Tom Tom Club, Grace Jones, Human League, ABC, they were fun, up records. So that's when I decided that I was going to make my Playgroup record, and then I play, I mean, you know, which is completely different than that. It's like...
Was it quite instinctive, the sort of composition of these tracks? Was it quite a bit much more faster for you to do and easy?
I kind of wanted to go back to how I used to make music. So all those Crazy Uncle records were really super, super complicated and a chore to make. And when I first started making music, it was fun. I'd pull up a beat, put a loop on, start making music, and it was inspiring. Mm-hmm. But now I had the advantage, after doing music for like 10 years or something, I actually knew something about music. So from going from that arrogant little fucker who didn't want to do anything to do with music, now I was thinking, you know what, I don't want to use samples anymore. And so most of the Playgroup record was based around, I might have a few little bits in it, but it was essentially music to me, you know, and that was exciting because I gave myself a new challenge. And also the whole thing was, at the time, I wanted to kind of be an ironic kind of pop star, because all my contemporaries, which I'm thinking about people maybe on Warp or all those kind of, all the really great producers at that time, it was all very serious and very dark, and I thought, you know, I want to be on the cover of this record. I want to look like I'm George Moroder or something. I want to be like a, you know, I want to be like a pop star.
It's a very like EMC squared.
Yeah, I mean, but
all you need is a big mustache.
But you know, this is, you know, I wanted to be, again, but in an anarchic way. It wasn't kind of like I want to be a pop star. It's more like, you know what, it's such an uncool thing to do that I'm just going to.
This was 2001.
This is 2000, yeah, 2000, 2001.
And the sort of scene around that time, no one was really interested in 80s music at that point.
You had you had people interested in cheesy 80s music, but really it's weird to think now how much 80s music is such a huge part of what's going on now, or has been for the past 3, 4, 5 years. Then it really wasn't, you know. And I was just disgusted, because when people would talk about the roots of dance music, they'd talk about chic, they'd talk about 70s music, but they'd never talk about these bands. And to me, you know, as I said, as a kid, listening to Soft Cell and Human League, and I mean, Kraftwerk were always cited as being this amazing band, but some of those other, like, you know, ABC, Soft Cell and Human League weren't being cited as these hugely important bands that I felt they were. So I kind of, part of the reason I made the Playgroup album was as a homage to, I mean, pretty much every track is a homage to a band that I was in love with when I was a teenager.
Were the graphics coming easy as well at the same time, or were they belabored, you know, this very long, you know, hard process for you?
Again, I'd gone through that pissed off period, and I kind of was coming out of it, and I was kind of like feeling fresh, and I was feeling like excited, and, you know, I wanted to do something colourful and direct and sexy, you know. I didn't want to do something which is really nerdy and geeky and dark, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the party mix thing that you did, which was, I don't know, how many tracks is in this DJ mix?
To promote, but at the time I was signed to Virgin Records, and they didn't quite understand what I was trying to do. Because again, they didn't really see the relevance of how important the 80s music was, and they were into they signed me, they were into the project. But so what I did to try and translate that to record shops and people and journalists, I did a mix, like a 1 hour mix with 200 tracks in it. And this was done before Ableton Live, and I mean, I mixed it live, I edited it in a computer. So that's 200 tracks. I mean, I should have brought it with me, I don't think I've got it here. But yeah, I did this thing called the party mix, which people can download if they want. It's on the internet everywhere. But let me just check and see if I've got it. I might have it on here. Bear with me 1 second. No, I haven't got it on there. Sorry. But anyway, yeah, it's like a huge mega mix, a homage to that whole period of time.
So you did it sort of create a context for people to understand
totally,
where Playgroup was coming from.
Yeah, well, and it went from hip hop through to Joe Jackson pop stuff to reggae to everything. It encompassed all the kind. I mean, that's the other thing with the Playgroup album. I didn't want to just do one type of music, so every track was a different style. Because for me, it wasn't weird to like Loose Ends and like R&B and Jam and Lewis, and to like a punk record. You know, so you know, a lot of people would have thought. I mean, you know, now again, it's kind of not that weird to like everything. But then people were so into different categories. You know, you either like this kind of music, you like that kind of music. For me, I was like, I don't care about categories. I just want to make a record that encompasses everything I love. And as long as I love it, it means it's a genuine record. You know, it's not contrived in any way.
Well, and it's the same with your label, of course. You
yeah,
know, exactly. How did you come to do the DJ Kicks mix for K7. Did they come and ask you?
Yeah, I mean, after the Playgroup album, they asked me to do it, and I was like, I'm not a DJ. What do you want me to do a DJ Kicks album for? I can't, I'm not a DJ. And they were like, no, it'd be really nice to put some of those influences that inspired you to make the Playgroup album into a mix album. So I kind of did a 50-50 mix. I took all my favorite producers at the time, new producers that were inspired by old stuff, like Morgan Geister, Metro Area, people like that, and then I mixed it up with kind of old things. And I'm proud of that mix. It still sounds kind of fresh now. So I'm.
And you were DJing more and more after the release of
Well,
it,
when I put the Playgroup album out, the record company forced me to go out and tour, or they wanted me to go out and tour, and I didn't really want to. So it was maybe detrimental to the record. But the idea of me, I love being at home, to be honest with you. And so the idea of going off and touring for 2 months was just a nightmare. So I didn't promote the record in any way whatsoever, really, as much as I should have at the time.
Do you think it's possible nowadays for artists who are making electronic music to just stay at home and make beats and not go on tour and do live shows?
And not go on tour?
Yeah.
It depends whether they want to make a living. Because now you can't really make a record for a living from putting out music. You've got to make a living from doing other things. So the live arena now is more important than it's ever. Is like the most important thing. The experience of experiencing a band. That's what it's all about now. It's not about, unfortunately, it's not just about making music anymore. I mean, the music's got to be good. But as I said, if you want to make money now, you've got to do more than that. You can't just make great records anymore.
Is that one of the reasons you ended up stopping output?
No, I mean, I ended up stopping output because I didn't enjoy it. Mm. And we were losing too much money, and all the people I was working with became fucking nightmares. And most of them I talk to now, most of them are fine, but they would admit it. At the time, it became very difficult. I mean, I was running a label which on the outside looked like a very proficient company, but it wasn't a company. Again, it was just me and someone helping me out. So I got myself in the shit really badly because I never expected it to take off. I honestly never expected people to like the record so much. I mean, it sounds crazy now, but like when I first had like The Rapture, House of Jealous Lovers, or Losing My Edge, LCD Sound System, they didn't have that much confidence in those records, you know? No one else really wanted them. I was like, I love that. I put that record out, but I didn't have any idea. I loved it, but I didn't have any idea it would take off the way it did. And the problem was, the minute it started taking off, we didn't have the infrastructure in place to support that. And I could survive as long as I could, and then I had to be honest to myself and say, you know what, this isn't good for me, it's not good for the artist, because I can't pretend to do something that I'm not capable of doing. So it was a logical conclusion for me to, after 10 years and 100 releases, to say that's it, and just creatively put an end to it.
It seems like when given the chance to ramp up on certain things, though, that you actively stop doing things. You know, you say, you know, you could have hired more people to help out with output, but there's this DIY streak in you that won't allow you to sort of bring in other people to help you out doing these things.
Well, I think ultimately at the end of the day, no one can do it as good as I can. I'm not talking about something else, but with my own vision, I find it very hard to delegate, and I find it very hard to. Well, it's not hard, but ultimately you can only rely upon yourself. You know, at the end of the day, well, not. I mean, I can't. I had someone amazing, a guy Rob, working for me at Output, who was incredible. Mm-hmm. So I can't. You know, the label wouldn't have survived as long as it did without his help, and I'm totally indebted to him. But generally, I feel far more comfortable when I'm in my own world, I'm doing my own thing, and I have control over everything around me. You know, so it's. But also, going back to kind of what I said before, I've never been interested in being flavour of the month. You know, I think I've survived for 2 decades doing what I do with credibility because I haven't wanted to be famous or be a star or be kind of like, that's not what it's about to me. It's all about, to me it's about the achievement, about doing things that I'm proud of. And ultimately I just want to please myself, and maybe that's selfish, but I really don't care that much. I mean, if I like people to like my records, but I don't make these things for other people, I make them for me, you know, to satisfy myself.
I wanted to talk about the Soul Wax artwork, which you won quite a few awards for.
Yeah.
This was, I guess, right 2004 or so, before Output ended. How did you end up meeting those guys in the first place?
Through my DJ gigs, I just started to meet people, like-minded people. So I was meeting people like, you know, as a community, I was meeting people like Hell and Tiga and Soul Wax and T. Schwartz and people like that. And that musically, we were very yeah, not just music, creatively, we were on the same level. And so Soulwax, I just got really friendly with them. And they were like, they wanted someone to work on their artwork for them. And I kind of had this idea about wanting to try and create a campaign. But again, going back to when I was younger, and I was saying that record sleeves used to just be a photograph with a bit of type on it. I just thought, you know, if you've got an option between you walk down the street, you see a poster that says the new U2 record, and it's got U2 coming out January the 5th on 7-inch, 12-inch CD, a photo of Bono, right? Or, I mean, that's kind of immediate, but it's instantly forgettable. But I wanted to try and create a campaign which was not immediate, but it wouldn't be forgettable. So we came up with this idea of doing, I came up with the idea of doing these kind of optical effects. So we did a whole series of posters and sleeves which were based around these effects. So if you imagine going down the street and seeing a poster with that, at first you walk past it, you can't quite see it, and then you're like, what the fuck is that? And you go back and see it. And I'd stand there in the street for an afternoon, and people would walk past it and go back. And I thought that has more of an impact than someone just walking past the poster and saying, oh yeah, that comes out on whatever date, you know. And so it took me a while to convince the record company to do it and the band, but eventually they were very brave, and they went for it. And we did a whole series of things with dots and lines and circles of these subtle kind of optical effects. And yeah, no, and it went down.
Did you show them a lot of designs or a lot of concepts, or was this the only one?
No, I did like 8 different ideas. I worked my ass off for this, and I know were my friends, so I wanted to do the best I could for them. So, but I was really happy they came. It took a lot of convincing initially, but I think the main reason that convinced them is it was like a one color. I think it was a black and white sleeve, so the record company thought it was cheap to print instead of doing. And I think that was part of the reason why they maybe decided to do it. But
with some of your earlier stuff, even I guess before the Todd Terry things, there were also just black and white.
Well, I'm colorblind, you see. So I'm red-green color deficient. So I can't keep away from colors as much as possible and try and stick to very direct.
But it's very interesting that you were using this stuff because it was a cost issue back in the beginning, and you came back to it.
I mean, this is the thing. I have to straddle the line between being a creative person and a business person. So I'm sympathetic now. It's like when I do designs for other people, I'm fully aware about what's going on in the industry and how things are going. So I have to kind of. I mean, I've got that knowledge, which is, I suppose, kind of fortunate in some ways.
Mm-hmm. You went on with you were talking about the live arena, and you've been working with this RG BPM. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'll show you. Let me see, hold on, where am I? Let me find it. Okay. So basically, this is kind of outputs coming to an end, and I'm thinking, I'm getting to that point when I'm pissed off again. And I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do? It had been like 10 years. So I was thinking, what do I want to do? And I just thought, I need to find, I could see already by the time that the label was coming to an end that the industry was changing. And just putting out a CD and just putting out a video is going to kind of be quite antiquated. So I wanted to kind of come up with something new. So I kind of developed I created a piece of software. We programmed it for 6 months, which was kind of a visual synthesizer. So I created this piece of software that runs on my Mac that I can basically make visual music. So I can play a piece of music and create live visuals. I mean, this is 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now. Mm-hmm. I mean, now there's a piece of software that can kind of do it, but this is something we custom built. And so I'll show you what I was I'll show you 2 things quickly. This is a simplistic thing. No, that's not it. Hold on. Let's stop the other thing. Pause that. So anyway, so basically, I got the opportunity. I got asked by the IMAX in London to do there was a show called Optronica, which was a festival of visual music, and they asked me if I wanted to open this festival. It was myself and Lemon Jelly. It's a quite different thing. Where Lemon Jelly and I were coming for quite opposing, but it's quite interesting. So I did this show called RGBPM, and this was one that I'll flick through it, but I'll show you some of the sections of the piece. So. Well, the thing was, we programmed on Max MSP. So, I mean, Max and Live is now kind of like a joint thing. But at the time, I was using Ableton Live for the music, but Max and Jitter to create the visuals. And there wasn't an existing software to actually, a program to create this visual. So over the period of 6 months, myself and programmers, we designed the whole thing. And I actually showed the show only once. 40-minute show once, and that was it.
And here today.
Oh, yeah.
With a buzz.
With a buzz, yeah.
Have you been doing more with this type of stuff?
I'm hoping. I mean, I want to do more stuff. The idea is for my next album, I want it to be more of an audiovisual kind of encompassing experience. You know, that's the idea.
You're working on a new album. You said you're going back to create your studio tonight and tomorrow.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, what's happened is, so coming out this other pissed off period, right? I moved out of my home and I got a beautiful home. Full of all these thousands of things I adore, like 60,000 records, 20,000 books, everything. And it was kind of really getting me down, having all these beautiful things around me. And I kind of decided that actually it's a hindrance. It's not like a benefit to me because it's distracting me. I'd get up and I'd start listening to music, and then before I know the day's gone, I'm sitting there looking through my books thinking, that's amazing, wow, that's great. And then I'm like, I haven't fucking done anything. I'm too busy looking at all these beautiful things. So I made a conscious decision just to lock it away. So I put everything in storage. So all I have on me is that bag behind me with my laptop, and I have a suitcase about as big as quarter of that table, and I've been living like that for a year, and I've just been traveling around, sleeping on people's sofas and doing a few gigs around the world and crashing with people, and it's been really quite inspiring. So all I have is my inspirations in my head. I don't have, and I'm avoiding purchasing and buying anything. I just want to kind of get back to a more pure, simplistic way of thinking.
What are you going to have in your studio? Is it all going to be on the laptop?
Now, this is the thing. I mean, because I've got, when it comes to equipment, I've got some beautiful things. I collect drum machines. I've got so many different things, and I'm going to think, I just want to master one thing. So I think I'm going to use my laptop Logic for recording, but I'm going to get one of my old sampling drum machines, like maybe an SP1200, or I've got an MP60 or a Studio 440, and just say to myself, for the next month, I'm going to master that machine so well. And just a limit of maybe 10-second sampling, just make a record just really back to basics and pure again. Because I hear so many things. I mean, a lot of if I'm honest with you, a lot of the reason I do things the way I do it, because I can't do it the other way. If I listen now to a production by Trent Muller or someone like that, right, I think, how the fuck did he do that? I can't even start to imagine. I don't have the brain capacity to work out how these things are done. So I'm more like, you know what, I've got to do it I've got to do the other way. In the same way when I used to design record sleeves that looked like 8-bit graphics, the truth was, as much as I couldn't afford a computer, I mostly didn't know how to use those big computers. So for me, always going back to basics is the simplest thing, and I feel more comfortable using things that I know, just the simpler things that I feel more comfortable.
Do you feel like you've mastered certain things over the years?
No, I mostly haven't. Like you said before, at the minute I get to a certain point, I kind of just push it away and do something else. But maybe I've got a very, very low attention span. So, it's not to be, admired for that. I wish I could master something. I mean, the thing is now on a computer, I'm like a, archetypal Mac user, right? So I do everything on this computer. I do my visuals, my music, my video stuff on it. But if I use something like Logic, I may be only using 5% of the program. Every time there's an update, I'm like, I don't even want that. Do you know what I mean? I don't even need half the tools there. I just use the basic things, and I think in a way that stops you from getting too caught up with trends, because if you get into some new software plugins, whatever, then your music starts to sound like other people, So I like to stick to. If it was up to me now, I'd mostly go back to what it is up to me, but maybe I just get my 950 and my Atari ST and start making music how I used to make music at the very beginning. But literally this afternoon when I leave here, I'm going to go to my storage and pick the machine and say, that's the machine I'm going to start finishing my album on.
So today is a really big day for you.
Yeah, it's a pretty big day. I'm glad I could share it with all you guys. Yeah.
You said even though you have quite a short attention span, the amount of projects you take on are quite small. You devote yourself very carefully to them instead of doing, 18 graphic design projects in a year. You'll do 4 or something like this. That's a conscious decision.
When you get older, I find I can't do as much stuff. So like when I showed you those very early sleeves at the beginning, I was doing 3 record sleeves a week. I was doing a remix every week. Now it takes me a month to do a remix, I think you just, the thing is I've lost the unfortunately I've lost the naivety, And it's weird, when I started my label, I used to adore bands that I could hear that naivety, like an early demo. It has something in there that's so beautiful. and I haven't got that anymore. So now I've got to kind of work in a
How do you
different
unlearn
way.
that? Is it possible?
I don't think it's possible. No, not at all. I think, you know, there's no way. And it's sad because I wish I could still make and create the same way I used to. But I've been tainted by so many things around me. It changes the way, it changes. You become very conscious. You become very, not contrived, but you think about things too much, you know. But it's funny, you asked me a question before about why I get to this point and break it down again. I mean, I think a lot of it is, no, I won't tell you that. I'll tell you that later. I'm just thinking because it's going to really put everyone off if I tell you that now. But go on.
You talked a little bit about the future of, music in terms of live being, the way to go.
Yeah.
What are you doing with your music or, to, take advantage of this situation?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, it's very fortunate, is I'm not signed to anyone at the moment. And I think that the way the industry, I mean, I'm not going to let myself be pessimistic about the current state of the music. Well, I said the music industry. I don't care about the music industry. That doesn't interest me. The business side of it, I don't care about, right? But music as a whole, I think right now is really exciting because I think, when I first started making music 20 years ago, the thought that I could make a record at home and put it online and have millions of people around the world hearing it is an alien concept, right? So to me, I just embrace that as a concept. I mean, that's amazing, right? I don't care. In a way, if I do my new album, I'd maybe rather 1 million people hear it for free than 20,000 people buy it, if I'm quite honest with you. Because music to me is all about communication. At the end of the day, that's what it is. Music is like one of the most basic, primal forms of communication. And I think, that's what it's coming back to now. It's just going to come back to people making great music and they make it for the right reason. They don't make, it became a point when people wanted to get into the music industry for that, to make money, and I think that's when things start to fuck up. Because bands got greedy, record companies got greedy, and now we're coming back to a real, coming back to a new stage, which I think is going to revolutionize, well, it is being revolutionized at the moment. I think that's exciting.
But to play devil's advocate for a moment,
yeah.
You're Trevor Jackson.
Yeah.
People want to hear what you're going to put out, or
yeah.
people, will pay to maybe buy, this record. Radiohead puts out a record for free, or says, pay what you want.
Yeah.
Enough people paid that they made a decent amount of money.
But that's Radiohead, yeah.
So where does that leave, a young producer?
It leaves a young producer to think, you know what, I want to make music, not because I want to be in a business. I make music because I fucking love making music. I make music because when I used to sit there as a kid listening to a beat for 5 hours non-stop, I was nodding my head because I loved that beat. I wasn't thinking, whoa, I'm going to make some money off of this. So I find it, I find it quite hard to, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone here, but for people that want to learn about being in the business, to me that's just bullshit. You should just want to learn how to make music, make the music the best you can, and make music you love. I mean, that's to me anyway. That's where I mean, I'm fortunate maybe because I started doing it a long time ago when there weren't so many people doing it. I don't know if it's different now, but it is different now. But I mean, that's just that's how I believe. That's what I believe in.
Sure. Let's see. I guess
I remember what I was going to say actually.
Oh yeah.
About that thing about the one thing that I've looked. That's a weird thing about when the only problem the problem I have with my creative process is when things become too easy. I think there's something wrong. I feel like I'm on a couch with a shrink or something here, but this is what's weird.
I'm listening.
But maybe it comes to maybe Tony will understand. Maybe it's a hip hop thing, right? When you think it's got to be a struggle. Do you know what I mean? You got to battle someone. Because from the beginning, whenever I used to make music, it was like I got to do something better than someone else. That's why it wasn't to me about making money. It was about I've heard that beat. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to make a beat better than that. I want my record to sound the best, And I think what happens is, for me now, when something comes up really easy, I question it. I'm like, this can't be right. No, I've only spent 3 hours doing it when I'm used to struggling. And the struggle is part of it for me. The fight and the struggle is part of the whole creative process.
You talk about those uncle records, though.
Yeah.
It take 5 hours.
Yeah.
That was an extreme struggle for you.
But I think they're good. It's like,
they're all right.
No, that's the thing. I go through back and forth. I mean, maybe I'm telling you too much. This is a bit like, but anyway.
Should we open it up to questions?
If anyone wants to ask me something, please feel free. Maybe I've spoken too much anyway. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I was wondering if you could tell us something more about the visual program you made. Like, was it live at the same? I mean, was the video generative program
everything
live?
was real time. Everything was live. Yeah.
And so you were sending separate channels, messages like MIDI messages
Exactly.
to Max MSP.
Yeah.
And you told me that you told us that it was represented on a big screen, right?
On IMAX, like the biggest
so
screen.
So what was the resolution for that, and how could the computer survive?
It was. Yeah, no, I mean.
I'm so sorry, man.
No, it's fine. I mean, it was HD quality.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just running off of a MacBook Pro. I was running off the old MacBook Pro.
Really?
Yeah.
With the audio at the same time. I mean,
with the audio at the same. Yeah. Well, no. In fact, sorry. That's right. It was two computers. I was running. Yeah, I had them synced. So one computer was running Ableton Live, and the other one was running Max MSP.
Okay.
Jitter. Yeah, that's how I was doing it.
Thank you.
Everything was. That's the whole thing. I mean, you look at the graphics and you're thinking like a bit simple, but the whole thing was it was HD real time. So I was playing stuff live, and things were responding live to the.
Okay.
To the signals. Don't be scared. I'm.
You said that you find a lot of this kind of thing really embarrassing, and but is there any part of your work that you really loved, something that you've done in the last while that makes you really happy?
Don't get me wrong, I love everything. I mean, I'm not like embarrassed about my work. I mean, it's just kind of, you don't. I don't want to think I'm a. I mean, in some ways, I'm very proud of what I've done. I've done a lot of stuff, but I'm not a show. I don't want to show off about it, and I'm proud of everything I've done. I wouldn't. I wouldn't let things leave. I wouldn't let things even get out there if I wasn't happy with them. Do you know what I mean?
What's your favorite thing that you've done?
My favorite?
Yeah.
What, visually or musically?
One of each.
Aha. Well, the visual thing was the Soulwax thing, if I'm honest with you, because I think that was a really... I was just doing one thing at that time. All I did was spend 3-4 months just working on that. So that benefited from not having any other distractions. And it worked for me, it worked for the band, and other people liked it, so it was kind of ideal. Musically, it's very, I don't know, it's quite... I think Make It Happen, my first single off of the Playgroup album, I think is, I show the cover, which was, this is the cover. I mean, it's funny because I was talking about not being nerdy, but actually I remember when I made this album, the whole idea was, it was about strong, powerful women. Because I was sick of hearing all these dance records with divas and talking about, I love you baby shit on it. So I picked, the cover was meant to kind of represent strong female kind of sexuality, and I was kind of nerdy Georgia Murray, the producer, with all these strong women around me. So I had like Kathleen Hanna on the album, I had, some really strong, powerful women on the album, and I'll play a bit of the track because actually, when I finished this track, it's the first time I've ever made anything. I said, if I don't ever make another record, I'm really proud of what I've done. I'll play a bit of it without getting too embarrassing, but there's going to be there's no buzz. What that's crazy. What?
You better start playing more records.
I better, hold on, let's have a look. Have I got it here? I hope I've got yeah. What? Happy with it for now, anyway.
Hi. I listened to a lot of the compilations from Output.
Oh, yeah.
Channel 2 is one of the records of my life, kind of.
Really? Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you, around that time, there were no bands like those that came out on Output. Where would you find them? Because there were so many of them and so crazy.
Let me remind myself, because I can't even remember who was on Channel 2. I think I've got a cover here somewhere.
You have like 7 Hertz.
Yeah.
And you have...
Which color was 2? 2 was a white one, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Okay, let's have a look.
Yeah, the white one, yeah.
The white one, let's have a look.
You had the LCD sound system,
okay,
like the biggest track they had.
Okay, yeah, so that was the one you mean, right?
Yeah, this one.
I mean, I was attracted to the freaks.
Sure.
So the people that no one else wanted to put out, these were all like rejects, that's the whole thing. These are bands that had been dumped by other labels. These are bands that no one else wanted.
Sure.
And that was kind of part of the thing that, you know, I was the underdog, and this is what attracted me to working with these people. So, I mean, 7 Hertz were just a guy that used to be in the brand new Heavies, actually, a guy Lascelles, a really talented producer. Manhead, Robbie, got in contact with me from Zurich. Calder, they sent me their first demos. Blackstrobe, I met them in Paris. LCD Sound System, Volga Select, I mean, is the guy from Blackstrobe. The thing was as well, I wanted to put out music which was kind of dance music but had personality. And the most important thing for me is, like, for anything to exist, it has to have a purpose to exist, you know. And I thought all these artists had personality. You heard the records and it had character. Yeah. And everything else at the time sounded quite bland. I was thinking, what's the point of putting a record out if it's going to sound like someone else? It doesn't mean anything to me. So all these things I think had a uniqueness to them. Yeah. And that was kind of what attracted me to it.
Cool. Also, how did you deal with the fact that the label released so many different styles? Like, you had like the Electrolium with 7 Hertz, it was really deep and melodic, and you had like punky albums like I don't know, like the Rapture and stuff. Yeah. How did the press? Did the press give you a hard time with that stuff?
Why would they? Because it was so diverse. I mean,
because most dance music labels or electronic music labels were so formatted. You had like a specific.
That was the whole idea. I did it because I didn't want to do that. You know.
Sure.
And
did your distributor ever say, "We're not sure how to sell this"? Or did you get a deal with them that was like, you're putting this out?
No, because it got to a point then when the label began to get more. I mean, this is the thing about this compilation. Remember, this is a compilation album for Output Records, but it doesn't say Output on the cover anywhere. It doesn't say it on the front because I didn't want to. To me, the whole thing, you know, I worked with James Lavelle at Mo Wax, and I saw the mistake that he made, which was he became bigger than his artist, right? His label, him and the label became bigger than the artist. And the one thing I'd learned from that is I didn't want that to happen. And the most important thing for me was to promote the artist above everything else. The label and myself was inconsequential. It was obviously present, but it wasn't an important part of it. So once the label started to take off, I think every record sold enough to break even just about. Some of the records sold more, obviously, but I never had any, I mean, if anything, I think people respected me for doing, I mean, I wasn't supposed to be a dance, like I said, the first records were like Fortet and Fridge. They weren't dance records, you know. But no, I'd never had any problems with the diversity of it from anyone.
You mentioned like a lot of times that you were pissed off.
Every 10 years, it's not, you know.
That's kind of like, yeah. Now, you know, sometimes it was like an internal thing, like you got tired of what you were doing and you wanted to do something new, or other times you heard what other people were doing and you said, oh, I want to do something better than that. Yeah. Now, which of those influences was stronger, was like more important for you?
I think my inside, how I felt inside, you know. I mean, I mentioned that Portishead thing, but that's, you know, a bit. I mean, it didn't piss me off enough to, you know. It's more my, you know, like I said, I am my own business. I am my own, you know, I am my own world, you know. So if I don't feel good inside about something, that's going to affect what I'm doing, you know. So I have to feel in the right headspace, and I have to have my heart in the right place to do work. To do things I enjoy, you know. Really.
Do you get writer's block?
Writer's block. I made an album for 10 years. No,
I guess
in fact, the truth is, with that, I've made about 5 albums I haven't been happy with to put out. But, well, I do, you know, like I said, when I got real bad block, I started working with other people to try and inspire me. And now I haven't had block, but I just get disillusioned or I just get disheartened. And it kind of like it puts me off, and then I just find something else to inspire me. In my life, I need to be constantly inspired by things, you know.
And I guess, you know, you can go and do design work when you're not feeling music, and you can go do music when you're not feeling design work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of random, but who's the biggest famous wanker you ever met in the industry?
Blimey.
Must be a lot.
It's more. I've met more wankers than I've met decent people in the industry, if I'm honest with you. I can't really. It's a good question, though.
I just wanted to ask.
I just wanted to ask about your process. Whether it's artwork or a song, do you start from scratch when it's something new, or do you have ideas that you've been kind of collecting that are lying around that you may not have used before, but you go back to?
I start fresh every time. Okay. It's like musically, it's always kind of surprised me, people that have like a kit.
Yeah.
And you know, you have this thing about, like, I've never quite understood that, about having like or you buy them now on CDs like a kit. And honestly, I don't think that, apart from like an 808 drum, which I've got one which I adore that I've used for the past 20 years or something, I've never used the same, I'd like to think I've never really used the same sound on any track I've done. Maybe a hi-hat or a bass drum, but generally I start afresh every time. And I've kind of, and visually as well, I just think, because I'm inspired by what, so either if I'm doing a record sleeve, I'm inspired by the record, or if I'm doing a remix, I start fresh every time. I don't have like a whole load of ideas in my head that I think that might work for that or that might work for that. I've never really done that. No.
Hey, you were saying before that you know, you're happy to release your music digitally if that means 1 million people hear it. But you know, as someone who also designs cover art and stuff like that, how do you feel that cover art's you know, kind of received in a day where people mostly download something with a small kind of JPEG attached?
Well, the thing is, I don't see cover art anymore. I don't see, you know, the idea of it's just a visual format. So if I think that, like, maybe, you know, 20, 30 years ago, the only way to represent a piece of music was through a flat record sleeve, I think it's kind of boring, because now you can represent your music by so many other different means, you know. So I'm not going to let that hinder, you know, I'm not going to lament over the death of the record sleeve, because I'm excited about the future of interactive visuals, or, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of like, for me, there's always going to be another way to find a way to, it's all about visually representing music,
yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, because, say, you know, those boring pictures of, you know, 3 dudes in front of a mountain or something on an old record sleeve. Like, you know, because I collect records.
Some of those are my favourite sleeves.
I collect records and I see a lot of those, and those generally look better when they're kind of degraded almost. Like, kind of when the edges are a bit stuffed up and you've got like sticky tape. I don't know if you've ever seen those, you know, you kind of buy like a new album or something and it's got like that fake degraded look where they've put like a bit of ring wear kind of around the edges and stuff, and it's like this fake attempt at that. But yeah, so that kind of makes sense with your like the Soul Wax graphic design stuff, because that looks probably brilliant on a screen and on, you know, a dynamic kind of way.
I mean, like I said, a good idea, what I do is I make a living from coming up with ideas, so it's the idea that's most important to me. So that if that concept of that idea is on a memory stick or on a 7-inch or a 12-inch or a CD, it doesn't bother me, as long as the idea comes across, you know. And what excites me is solving problems. So if someone comes up to me with saying, we're not going to do a record sleeve, but we need you to represent this record in another way, I'll find a way of doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Thanks.
I just found out that you worked with Kathleen Hanna.
Yep.
What was it like working with her? Because I'm personally a huge fan of hers.
She was great. I mean, she was like, if I'm really honest, I just knew a bit of Bikini Kill stuff.
Oh, okay. That's great.
And the start when she started doing La Tigra.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't so aware of the legacy of what she stood for, to be honest with you. And I was introduced to her through a friend.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't, you know, I remember going for sushi in Greenwich Village or something. People were like, oh my God, it's Kathleen Hanna. And I was just like, cool, you know, but she was a really sweet person to work with. And we did 2 tracks, the only one that got released, the one that I put out in like a couple of hours. She was a pleasure to work with her. She was great. Really good.
When you're collaborating with other artists like that, I mean, is it usually quite quick, or are there things that take really long time, very belabored?
I need to work, even though I spend such a long time doing stuff, when it comes to that process of working with someone, I want to get it over and done with as quick as possible. Now, normally, because it's a kind of, you know, it's a thing you get in front of someone in front of a microphone. It's when they think the microphone's off, you get the best thing. In the same way, going back to the thing I was talking about, the demos and naivety, when things get too, for me anyway, when things get too labored, the vibrancy and the energy gets destroyed, you know. So I like to try and get someone in the studio and boom, just get it done.
Once you get to that third take, they're thinking too much about, oh, I have to fix this.
No, I don't. I just think the magic.
You know.
I don't think the magic. I mean, normally whenever I work with someone, I'm like, I never let someone read lyrics. They have to know it off by heart. I'm always like, unless they know it in their head, I don't want to actually work with them because it's kind of, I want them to be able to just, I want it to be more real, you know.
Is there any other questions from the audience? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.